Morning, everybody. My name is Mervyn Davies. Proud to be hosting today. We've got a great group of panelists. In a second, I'm going to pass over to David, who is the founder of the charity and an inspiration in so many different ways around addressing some of the issues. What I wanted to start with is, I think we've all got to accept that we were going through an industrial revolution. The impact of technology on every business was absolutely massive. And then COVID came across, sort of happened across the world, affecting every single individual, every company, every nation, every government. And what that has done is to speed up the digital revolution. But what it's also going to do is change our attitude to communities. I think it's going to strengthen community involvement. I think it's going to cause more government intervention in business and in life in general, but it's going to change the way we, our attitude and the way we work. It's going to change the clothing for work. If I were to show you the number of the panelists, the men are wearing shorts, myself included, and the question whether that continues for work environment. But I think we're going through a profound change. The challenge, which I'm sure the panelists will address, is there is a danger. We already had great inequality across the world, and we had increasing poverty levels in lots of countries, and the UK is no exception. The danger with COVID is that we have rising unemployment and rising inequality hitting the very people that were in need of help. So for me, that is a key issue that the panelists have to address. So a speeding up of the Industrial Revolution, a huge challenge now that government is so involved in business. And I'm sure that Andy from NatWest will have a view on this, but we've got a great group of panelists. Let me pass over to David to say a few words before I start asking lots of difficult questions to the panel.
Right. Well, thank you, Mervyn, and thank you to the also very distinguished group of panelists, and thank you to the over 300, maybe 350 people who have joined us today for this webinar. I think that in itself is an indication that the world is changing and is ready for change. What we don't yet quite know is what kind of change we're going to get. But today, we will discuss one of the ways to effect change. We will also show that it can be a win-win for everybody. Leadership through Sport and Business has transformed the lives of several hundred bright but disadvantaged young people over the last 8 years. We've done it in London, we've done it in Birmingham, we've done it in Manchester, and we've done it in Liverpool. And of those several hundred young people, 75% of them have been BAME. That's not an accident. Some employers have taken young apprentices one at a time. Some have taken 5, some have taken 25. One took 53. And this year, NatWest have ring-fenced 63 positions for young people in their organization and have agreed to take on another 200 in the 2 years to come. We believe that a lot of other companies will join them. Obviously, increased diversity and gender equality is very important at the board level and very important in the pipeline. But I think it is critically important too in the startup positions, at the entry-level positions, because these young people are going to occupy the pipeline and the boards of the future. So how is this done and what does it take? I'm going to leave a lot of this to Andy, of course, because he is doing it right now. But briefly, in my opinion, in order to raise diversity and gender equality to high in the list of your recruitment criteria, you need to show and demonstrate leadership. You need to demonstrate vision. And you also need support. You also need support, however senior and powerful you may be. You need support from your co-board members. You need support from your line managers. This is very important. At LTSB, Leadership Through Sport and Business, we think that companies who know they're going to get through this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis will at the same time want to address and define their sense of purpose. Having talked to many of our employers, I believe and I know that they want more diversity and more gender equality. Many of the companies, both in the public and the private sector, are going to seek the help of LTSB and other third-party providers. The reason is that we take care of the hard part of this exercise for them. Leadership through Sport and Business finds the young people, recruits them, trains them through our various boot camps, introduces them to enrichment partners, including 6 Premier League football clubs currently, and also we arrange for interviews with leading companies for them. So in addition to doing that, we provide line management training, we ensure an exclusive workplace, an inclusive workplace, I should say. We provide extra pastoral care, we provide independent mentors, and we give these young people extra love. And by that I mean, and I hope Justina can confirm this, by that I mean that all of our staff really get to know our young students. We're like an extra family to them. We cry a lot in a good way because of our contact with these fantastic young people. So to finish my few words, let me tell you the good news that I promised you. It is obvious that more diversity and more gender equality equals more creativity in an organization. It is more reflective of most companies' customer bases, and it is moral and it is ethical. But the good news is that all the studies I've seen from McKinsey, from Harvard, from Boston Consulting Group, all confirm that it is also good for the bottom line. However, even more important than the mighty dollar and the mighty pound, we are transforming lives of young people here. These are the young people that will be the leaders of the future. We're also transforming the lives of some of their families and sometimes reaching their local communities. We have to act, however, and I'd like everybody on this webinar to act, to reach into themselves, of course, during these times and examine one's attitudes to race and gender equality. But I would also like them to look into their networks, both personal and business, and to see who they know that can help some of the young people get career jobs for the future. We have to act. It's a win-win-win. How can we not act? Thank you. Mervyn.
Thank you, David. You know, there is a message for the corporates listening, which is, if you can help us, please do. This is going to be a time of extraordinary change in politics and in business, which leads me into our first panelist, actually, which is Cheryl. You're a partner at one of the most eminent headhunters in the world, Heidrick and Struggles. So you're dealing with people and with business on a daily basis. Cheryl, you know, you helped name this event. What do you see changing in businesses' attitude and their purpose as a business?
Well, thank you for that question, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. I think that organizations have always espoused purpose, at least in the last 20, 30 years. It's been a term, but now more than ever, it's really resonating, not just for the frontline folks and businesses, not just for middle management, but for senior leaders and also for those very critical stakeholders. I think organizations are being held more account to actually be true to what we say about purpose. And that's because it speaks to the why. It's bigger than profit or shareholder value. And so people and stakeholders are looking for organizations that are truly making a difference in the world through the work that they do. And so that's one of the things that I think is changing relative to purpose.
I can't have you on a call and, you know what I'm going to ask. America seems to be quite a divided country, and I know we're being recorded and, you know, you've got to be careful what you say, but honestly, from afar, it does appear as if America's very divided. for a variety of reasons and has, what shall I say, an unusual style of leadership at the moment. Would you like to comment?
Yes, although rather than comment on the unusual style of leadership, I'll comment on the core issues that are at play in America that leadership seems to be tone deaf to. So we're at an extraordinary time in the world. The protests around Black Lives Matter are not just resonating in the US, but globally, because the issue of inequality, the issue of systemic oppression, has and has not, is unfortunately a global thing. And it's very personal for me. You know, as an African American, being part of an ethnic group that was forced into the country, unlike any other ethnic group, laboring for 250 years in slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow, and now many people view the system of inequitable policing and jailing as the new Jim Crow. Forced labor for people who are incarcerated for sometimes very small infringements. And so we're at a point of reckoning, and I believe it's also an inflection point, and it's an opportunity for organizations to act. It's an opportunity for communities to act, and purpose really plays into that, because if you believe that there's a greater good beyond profit and shareholder value, which are great things, don't get me wrong, I am a business person, I believe in profit, but it's a triple bottom line where there's a good that can be done for the business, for the shareholders, and for the community. This is a moment where that can happen, and I'm excited with the nature of the multicultural protests that we see. I'm excited by the nature of the changes that are happening in communities to policing systems, and for corporations like my own, a leadership advisory firm, looking inside to say, what can we do? How can we contribute to this positive change?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I do think the whole world is at an inflection point on three major issues: diversity and inclusion, climate change, and inequality. And what COVID has done is brought home to us the importance of, you know, family, et cetera, but it's also exposed the frailties around the world. And it's very clear that business can't stand on the touchline, which, thank you, Cheryl, which leads me to Andy. Andy, you're head of NatWest Ventures. Just explain, it's good that, by the way, Andy, it's good that in this crisis, the bankers are not getting bashed like they were in the last one. So it's great to have you on the panel. Just explain why this initiative, this joint initiative, is important, and a little bit about your job as well.
Sure. I mean, I think my job's quite important in this because two things. I'm not in HR. I'm not in D&I, but I drove this process, which I think if you're a listening corporate, and you know, it's the jobs of people in the business to drive this stuff and not leave it to specific departments. So whilst that's been picked up now by HR and D&I, it's really important that all of us in business do whatever they can. Secondly, I mean, I have a team of 500 people working in digital businesses, which is quite important because it's a future skill, and it's also a very meritocratic business because you can judge people on their lines of code. So in a sense, it's well set to make a difference. It's also it's a knowledge economy, and people are expensive. So I wanted to solve that problem. But I think it's important in a couple of ways, really. One, to me personally, I think having come through my midlife crisis, I then realized that I am lucky, and social mobility was an element to me being so fortunate in life. And I wanted to make a difference. If it's not obvious, I'm a 50-year-old white man. So I'm perfectly positioned to kind of help and give back. So personally, this is really, really important to me. But for the organization, it just opens up the talent pool, you know, hugely, because we're fishing from a very narrow field if we just fish from the good universities, because all the talent's been filtered out by them, not a lot of the talent. So we've got brilliant talent on our doorstep, and I just want the best talent from wherever it comes from. And then finally, why is it important to a corporate? I think it's something that doesn't often come up, but the time is right now. People want to hang on to solving inequality and doing the right thing and working for an organization that stands for the right thing. So, you know, the amount of support I've got from within NatWest at all levels, people wanting to help, people proud of what we're doing, the mentorship, you know, has been absolutely huge. So most organizations, there's a tailwind to do this stuff, and it really helps the organizational pride to know that you're making a difference at the front of this stuff.
And Andy, I did ask you, have you read all the books in your bookcase behind you?
I haven't, but I'll let you into a secret. They're not all deep, erudite, academic books. So let's have a look. We have Captain Underpants here. If you
okay, let's move on. Let's move on quickly. We're not going to discuss his reading habits.
Sorry
Andy,
to disappoint you all.
yeah, Andy, can I just ask you very quickly before we move on? You have in your area of responsibility, you know, investing in standalone digital business. Just a few words about the speeding up of the economy into a digital economy would be very helpful for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen, the only thing that I can kind of hang on to at the moment, I think a lot of people predicted the future, and we're all going to be wrong, but there are undoubtedly trends that we've been picking up for the last few years that will be accelerated. So whether it's you know, mobile access, working from home, modular technology, all of those things, we're seeing a dramatic increase in cashless society. All of the things that you're reading on the headlines are happening. So volumes are going up in that regard. Corporates are spending more money on digital. People aren't getting out of their homes. All of that stuff is true. So it's a growth area.
Thank you, Andy. Jimmy, Floyd, Hasselbaink. Did you ever score against my beloved Tottenham Hotspur? Did you really ever score against us?
Oh, it was all love. It was all love. I had to do the business, nothing personal.
Jimmy, you know, you've had a wonderful career in as a player and as a manager, but sport is often presented as one of the major routes that, you know, it's out of poverty for young men, and as the women's football grows, women as well. Just a little commentary about your journey and what it was like would be really helpful for the audience. Because I'll tell you, one of the questions I've had, which I think is such a great question already, is not everybody is going to go to university. Not everybody is a great sportsman or woman. But and we'll come. I'd like the panelists all to think about this question. But from your perspective, what was your journey like?
My journey was actually not very easy, but it was not very easy because I didn't make it very easy. My mom was a hardworking person. It was 6 of us. My mom was by herself. We didn't have a lot, but we were healthy and we were happy. I went to a really good school, but because of the community, there was a lot of violence and a lot of crime and all those kind of things. And my way out was football. You know, I went to a good school, but because of a lot of crime and a lot of other stuff going around, I concentrate too much on football. Now, I was the lucky one. Not a lot of us can go into into sports and make a living out of sport, because the percentage of that is very, very, very small. And also, not all of us want to be in sports. So for me, it's very important, the communities, you know, it's very important that we cater for everybody, you know, whatever they want to do. My journey was it ended up being absolutely magnificent, but it could have also gone the other way, because I didn't have the right people giving me opportunities. You know, I had my brother who was helping me, but I didn't really had the professional help, and that's why I'm working with Slanky very hard to give these opportunities to whoever wants this opportunity for this in those communities, and whatever this opportunity is. If somebody wants to be a bank manager or whatsoever, or we cannot all be top sporters, and we are not all wanting to be top sporters. We need to cater for everybody, and that's what I'm really working hard for.
I mean, that's why I think LTSB is so important, because it's an opportunity for those that have done well, like yourself, in business and sport, to give back to those that are on the journey. And, you know, joking apart, my dream in life was always to be a footballer. I just wasn't quite good enough and went for trials. But I didn't speak English until I was 7. I remember how nervous I was when I first came to London as a, you know, to work. The traffic, the scale of it, I was scared.
Yeah.
And, you know, just a little bit about, in your journey, there have been huge highs and huge lows, like when you lose to Spurs. But basically, just talk a little bit about how you handle, that wasn't meant to get a laugh, really, how you handle highs and the lows.
Let me come back to the losing of Spurs first. In my 4 years at Chelsea, we have never lost against Spurs.
Oh, God.
Only won all 8 times.
Okay, next panelist, please.
And every time I have scored. Yeah. So no, but I had to say that. But yeah, no, you come through highs and lows, and especially when you are working so hard to get to the top, you get knocked down. And you have moments where you think, this is what I'm doing it for. When you get down, it is in that aspect I've been lucky, because it is having the right support around you. My family life has always been really strong. I've been always very close to my brother, who is one of my best friends. So I've always had, like, emotionally someone to fall back on. But basically, what I have learned in the time, you have to have bad moments to be able to come good, or to appreciate the good. And you have to really be strong and keep on going. I've seen Denzel Washington speaking, and he is one of my heroes. And he says, you keep on falling, but you keep on getting up, and you keep on trying to fall again, because you cannot just give up.
Yeah.
You know, so you're gonna get highs, you're going to get lows, but you have to really keep on believing.
Yeah, I think that is one of the big messages for everybody listening. It's how you handle the lows. It's more important than how you handle the success, because there is no such thing as a straight line to success. It's lots of ups and downs. If I may just pass to Justina, who is really the star of today, and one of the pilot program members. Justina had a very bad internet connection. I'm not sure she's still on. Are you on, Justina?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. So how did you hear about the scheme, and how did you get involved?
So for me, there was always that real pressure to attend university because of my grades, but I was hugely deterred by the £27,000 debt and the 6.3% interest. For each year, you don't pay that full loan amount back. And I know for a lot of people that debt is an investment you deal with later, but for me, that just was complete foreign territory. Signing a contract at 18 to that sum of money is just not something I personally felt comfortable with. I do work hard, but there's always that fear of uncertainty. I think about only 52% of graduates actually get a graduate level job. But what are the odds for me if I don't come from an affluent background? I am female and also BAME. I would say I felt the bootcamp with LTSB and the apprenticeship in NatWest Ventures was too good to be true, because I found that those that source from disadvantaged backgrounds don't tend to have access to the same opportunities as their peers, regardless of how well they perform. I'd ultimately say I felt incredibly lucky when I received also could have been an opportunity missed. And that's not me doubting my ability. I am here because of hard work, but it was more me doubting society, because often the opportunity just isn't there for those that deserve it the most. So prior to finding this, I received a opportunity for a degree apprenticeship at a environmental science company in the city, but that's not where I wanted to go, because it was that suit and tie, white, middle-aged men environment. And I had to almost pull myself aside and say, well, actually, I have a lot to offer. I need to be somewhere where I feel welcome and I feel as if I belong. So I sort of put all of my eggs in one basket to be part of the venture community. And that's not usually how I lead my life. I always have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. But in this instance, I rejected the science offer and I actually withdrew all of my university applications before I'd even got to the interview stage at the bank. So it's a pretty good thing I got the job.
Have you gained confidence, and just talk about, you know, how nervous you were at the beginning?
So at LTSB, they already identified that we were brilliant, and there was that confidence that we just needed to have that boost of being told, you can do this. We're not here to make you a professional, you are. It's about that. So I would say I had like less confidence when I started compared to now. Like now I'm in a meeting with how many people. So I would say that LTSB were really there to bridge that gap that those from disadvantaged backgrounds have, because they do have the talent. It's just about being able to portray that talent in a professional environment.
Well, you're already very clear to me and everybody listening and watching that you're a great role model. So I'm going to come back to you in a second. Andy, how do you make a partnership like this happen and work, and how do you mentor, you know, great individuals like Justina?
So first of all, if you are thinking of doing something like this, absolutely partner. I mean, it's been really transformational for us. So when we first had the idea, there was just a couple of us kicking it around. We thought, well, what we should do is set up a scholarship for Black kids to go to Oxbridge, and that will be great. And we made a couple of contacts, and we got introduced to a fantastic guy called Mark Martin down in Brixton. And we went down there and said, you know, we're thinking of this scholarship. And they said, stop now. The kids want a job, they want money, and they want a degree as well. And they want support. So we were like, okay, let's do that then. And then we were introduced to LTSB, who said, you know, you guys don't need to kind of go and look in these places, because we'll do the looking for you. We know what to look for. We know how to sift. We'll do it all. And it just saved us so much time and effort. So it was really transformational. We couldn't have done it without them. We certainly couldn't scale like we are doing without them. You know, people like Pete, who's the deputy CEO, he has, you know, even a couple of weeks ago when he needed to visit one of the apprentices, he walked for an hour to his house to deal with it. 2 hours in his house and walking an hour back. I mean, that's the power of I guess the third sector and the partnerships on here. And what we also do is through LTSB, there are tremendous amounts of other corporates that want to help. So in the bootcamp, we had people like Salesforce and Microsoft helping with things like public speaking and interview training, and we had West Ham. So it was a real collective effort, actually. And the training, I know we've got QA helping with training now. We got BPP on the degrees. So it was just a coming together of people that have been doing this for a long time and want to help, and it was really ready to go. So it just made the whole thing possible. Really, I can't overstate how important that was.
Andy, one of the questions that's come in, which is going to put you on the spot a bit, you know, you're a banker, so you're used to it.
Yeah.
How can NatWest use its influence over your whole supply chain for them to get involved with LTSB? Because, you know, NatWest RBS is massive. You've got huge market share.
Yeah.
You cover the whole of the UK. why, you know, what can you get all of your supply chain customers involved? So that
that's a good question. I mean, the kickoff of the apprenticeship, and because one of the, and we'll get to it in a second, I think it's a great responsibility of people like me, is, you know, I have convening power. So we had a dinner at Coots, and we invited many of the top kind of execs in a lot of the big European tech companies to hear from LTSB and to support our partnership. So out of that, we did get another company picked up the apprenticeship, and a lot of volunteered to help. So we're going to do more of that when we're allowed to get together again. Things like this, happy to boost. I am, if anyone's listening from a corporate that wants to hear or wants me to come in and talk to them and hear more about it, absolutely more than happy to. I mean, I think LTSB, I'm sure there are others out there, are fantastic, and we'll do as much as we can to help.
So note, David, Andy is willing to go and pitch to lots of different corporates. We will follow up on
I wouldn't say lots, but yes, I am.
No.
I mean,
Andy, it's recorded. It's, you know, minuted. Let me go to Cheryl. You know, one of the questions is, when it comes from Alexander Jolly, when it comes to the reality of pre-existing cultures in organizations, what do we need to focus on? You know, we need to focus on diversity in recruitment, but also in retention and progression. I think, you know, the reality is you've got pre-existing cultures and so much needs to change. You know, you deal with headhunting people and researching people. How's this going to change?
Right. Well, that's a great question, and I agree. And one of the great things about Heidrick is that for 40 years, we've been in the business of culture shaping through Cinderlining culture shaping. So we've done a lot of work in this area, and what we know about culture is it takes purposeful leadership, so leaders who are aligned around whatever that purpose is that they have as an organization, and they have to be committed to personal change. So it's personal, not just talking the talk, but being willing to walk the walk. You've got to broadly engage your organization, and then there's systemic reinforcement. So making sure your systems and processes work together to produce the results you want. So those are general principles of having a healthy, thriving culture. When it comes to diversity and inclusion, you know, diversity is a fact. We all have differences. It's the obvious and invisible differences that we have. But inclusion is an act. Those are the behaviors that leaders, managers, teams have to really involve others and to reach out and to ensure that people have an opportunity to contribute. And when you have inclusive actions, one of the outcomes is belonging. So we heard Jimmy talk about that earlier, that emotional support, having a connection to a broader community. And so I would say many organizations have a rotating door. They bring in diverse talent leave. They bring in diverse talent leave. And that's because they aren't necessarily focused on how are we being inclusive? What are the routines that we have? What are the connection points that we have for people to come in to learn the ropes of our culture? Do we have mentoring? Do we have additional connections? Are we thinking about how this person can uniquely contribute to our outcome? So absolutely, it requires an inspection of our own culture to understand how inclusive we are and to try to expand that so that we really can give people a sense of belonging and knowing that they can contribute and thrive. And I would say, I know we're talking about early in career talent, but an important part of retention is that I can see that there are others like me who have a path to success in this organization. You know, there's the saying, you cannot be what you don't see. And so I would encourage organizations to look up and down to understand how diverse and inclusive are you, because there's so much data that shows that diverse and inclusive organizations outperform in the market. The teams are more productive, the businesses get better results. And so there's a business case for this. It's not just altruism. It's not just ethics, but there's also the bottom line.
No, that's great. If I may just move to Jimmy. Jimmy, one of the great questions which I'd like to put to all the panelists, actually, it's from Laura Young, and then there's a separate question from James. You were lucky enough, Jimmy, to have a brother who you were you know, sharing things with and mentoring and chatting about things. So many young people don't have that network at home and live in a deprived area. What advice have you got for them? I mean, it's a tricky one, and I'd like all the panelists, and I'll move to Justina next,
Yeah,
just to think about this one.
it is a tricky one. The only thing that I can say is, if you have no one, keep on talking to yourself, keep on making sure you keep on doing the right things. You know, we all know what is right and wrong, but it is go and stand in front of the mirror and talk to yourself that you can do it, and you keep on talking to yourself that you can do it, and make sure that you stay on that straight path, you know. And if you are really struggling, get to your teachers, go to your teacher at school and speak to your teacher. Use somebody who is maybe not as close as you think, but a teacher has got an obligation to help you, or to just listen to you, whatever you want. But main thing, don't give up. Do not give up. Even in the hardest time, do not give up.
Yeah, I always believe that leaders in whatever walk of life have a positive bias. So I have on my journey really focused on making sure that I'm surrounded with people with positive energy. And I've also believed, and Jimmy, you've done it, is it doesn't matter what walk of life, nobody is perfect, and you have to learn new skills all the time. I think in this digital, you know, world, you can go online and learn new skills and practice and practice and practice, but you have to have positive energy. You know, and I think athletes, more than any, you know, job really, they have to have positive energy, because if they go out there and say, oh, I'm going to lose, then they're going to lose.
Yeah, exactly. You can't go in with that mindset. You know, as you said, you have to have a positive mindset, and keep on believing that you can do it. You know, even in the hardest times, keep on believing that you can do it. And everybody has got at least somebody who is positive around you. And if you think you don't, keep on looking for that person.
I agree.
Keep on looking for that person, and get that energy from that person.
Yeah, I remember one person saying to me that I had two disadvantages that would hold me back for life. One, that I was Welsh, and the second, I was a short ass. I was only 5'5". And the you know, it feels funny now, but it was the reality. And you've just got to look inside yourself and be very positive. So if I may just move to Justina, you know, people who haven't got a network at home, people who are in a deprived community, you're on a journey, and very early on your journey. What comments and questions, advice have you got for them?
So I mean, to address the question of how organizations can help provide these opportunities, don't just listen to this and sit there and think, yeah, that's a good idea. Actually embrace it, like Andy has done. Because for me, I don't come from that support network. I am from a disadvantaged background, but I've had access to this opportunity because organizations like NatWest have offered it to me. So keep promoting these opportunities like this, and make sure that you're really understanding that if you hire someone different, you can't expect them to act the same. I think that's a really big take on this. If you're hiring someone that comes from a completely different background to you in a socioeconomic sense and a cultural sense, they're not going to be the same. So provide them with mentors, maybe ask them how they're doing more than you would the average person. For example, when we went on lockdown, I was asked multiple times, do I have a working space at home? How was working from home? My manager's been having so many conversations with me to make sure that I am comfortable, because he is aware of that disadvantage that me and the other apprentices have come from. So it's really embracing and understanding the weight of, you're not just taking people from disadvantaged backgrounds on, you really do need to also educate yourself and what that entails and how you can support them, because it's not just take them on and let them who like sort of go to their own devices. It's take them on and actually constantly have that support network there.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy, what advice have you got for, and Justina just answered beautifully, what advice have you got for people who don't have the network and at home and are in truly a deprived community? What can they do?
I mean, it's really tricky, right? So I 100% agree with attitude. I 100% agree that kind of the digital access is a leveler. But yeah, I think keep engaging. I mean, just as I was hearing the answers, I mean, most people have got most people are good people that want to help. So reach out, ask questions. You know, even if you kind of look on LinkedIn, you can see who the good people are, the people that want to make a difference. Ping emails, do something, ask questions. I mean, in our kind of program, what we've done to try and help there is we've put very senior mentors individually for each apprentice. Justina and the other apprentices are going back into their communities to tell the story and to make connections. So we're trying to kind of work both ways there. So I think it's attitude really, but I do recognize that, you know, this is not one that will get solved overnight, but, you know, digital does enable much greater connectivity. Mervyn, before I just finish off my question, there is one point that I want to make sure that we make, because I think it's really important, and Justina touched on it, is when we set this program up, we didn't set it up to get, and hopefully it's obvious, cheap staff, cheap recruits. We wanted to get future leaders. So we made it very clear that we were going to pay a good wage. We didn't want people working in the evenings to cover their wages. We wanted to pay for a degree, which actually was very easy because we had the apprenticeship levy. And we wanted to make it like a leadership program. So we very much see the digital apprentices not as you know, in a few years' time sitting and doing great coding, but being the future leaders of the bank. And that's what people like Justina told us. And wouldn't have joined otherwise. That's really important if you're listening, I think, as a corporate and thinking of doing this.
I mean, one of the questions is, I'm actually going to go off script a little bit and ask Paul. One of the questions is that certain sectors have very poor social mobility. How can LTSB help those sectors in terms of social mobility? Are you on, Paul?
I am, thank you very much. Well, I mean, that's a really great question. There are a number of ways that we can work with organisations to help realise their ambitions around social mobility, around diversity, around inclusion. Part of it is a purpose-based leadership. We've touched on that earlier. There has to be that intent and desire through the leadership to want to do that. But with us, by working with an organisation like us, we are reaching the types of young people. For example, if we think about it in a young person's context, we are reaching those types of young people who need the support to become more socially mobile. If they need those ropes, those ladders to get more social mobile, to access the opportunities within businesses, to access the range of employment opportunities, of training opportunities. And it's by partnering with organisations like us, as Andy can attest to, where those organisations can really make that aspiration around social mobility a reality. Because it's in the essence of true partnership that we can do it. The business can provide something, you know, the opportunities and the framework and the structure, and we can provide the young people who are prepared and ready and engaged and ambitious and excited about their future. So it is about partnership. It's the right people coming together to create meaningful change.
Cheryl, just in terms of pieces of advice, a number of questions I received is around what's the one piece of advice that you would give viewers or listeners today? What's, you know, on their journey, what's the piece of advice you would give?
Well, know that you can make a difference. We've heard different aspects of Justina's story or Jimmy's story, where taking the time as an organization or a leader to invest in mentoring or helping support an initiative like LTSB is really critical. You know, I shared on an earlier conversation that I came from a similar program in the US. I'm from Flint, Michigan, the birthplace of General Motors, and they had a community initiative looking for kids to encourage them in engineering. And so you might not have the exact framework that we've talked about, but there's a way that your organization can reach out in the communities where you are abiding and make a difference. And so it might be mentoring, reverse mentoring. I definitely promote partnering with an organization like LTSB. And the benefit you get is not just doing good in the community, but again, it's energizing your own organization. Millennials, people who are in the Gen Y, are looking for organizations with this bigger purpose that they can contribute to. So this is a way that you can engage your people as well as engage with very worthwhile communities where they've got merit, they just need the opportunity. So my piece of advice is know that you can make a difference and look for a way to do that.
Jimmy, one of the questions here, it's anonymous, but it's a true exaggeration. They've described you as a Chelsea legend, and it's anonymous, but it says, my dad sends his best wishes. So I need to record whichever dad sends the best wishes. But what advice, what's the one piece of advice, without repeating what we've already discussed, that you would give?
I would give, enjoy it. As simple as that. Enjoy it. It's hard, but enjoy the journey as much as you can. Because later on, you're going to look back and you're going to think, you know, oh, this I didn't do right, that I didn't do right. But when you enjoy something, you work harder and you achieve more. So for me, it's a big thing. As simple as that. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think that in leadership, in whatever, whether it's sport, business, whatever, I've been lucky enough to be at the top of business and be a CEO and being, you know, in Gordon Brown's top team as a minister. If somebody told me, you know, as a youngster that I was going to be in the House of Lords, I would have died laughing.
There you go.
One thing I've learned, you absolutely have to have stamina, and you have to be able to take the knocks. And stamina means that you really do have to have health and wellness as one of your top priorities. Yes, you've got to learn new skills and you've got to grow as an individual, but you've got to be healthy and you've got to think about your body as well as your mind. Would you agree with that?
Yes. That comes first and foremost. But when you are, why I said enjoying, when you're enjoying what you're doing and where you're going, those kind of things are natural inside. They are, you know, they are there, but you're not really focusing on that. Myself, I had to do lots of things that I didn't know that I had to do before I started to be a footballer. The discipline aspect of it, you know, was a big transition for me. But I think now, if I would have enjoyed that more and doing it in the right way, I would have become so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I would have, I think even then, I have achieved a lot, don't get me wrong. And I'm really proud of what I have achieved. But you always look back at, could I have done more? You know, could I have done this? And I didn't do this because I didn't really enjoy it, you know? If I would have just had an open mind about it and enjoyed it, I would have maybe achieved better grades, you know, or score more goals against Tottenham.
Yeah, you could play for Spurs. Justina, you went on a boot camp. What was that like? I mean, even in my ripe old age, I've done a boot camp in Hyde Park, but what was it like on a business or, you know, this type of boot camp? What was it like? And what did you learn about yourself?
So it entailed lots of meetings with professionals, and we had advice on interviews and CVs and using LinkedIn. So I would say it was quite a learning curve. I did learn a lot about myself, in the sense I now know I can speak in a professional environment, whereas previously just not something you learn in school. You learn to write and read, but you don't learn this is how you speak in a professional environment. This is appropriate, this isn't. So it was about learning that, and also learning that I actually am better than I thought I was. It's about having that self-confidence, because I do have a lot to offer. And LTSB going on that bootcamp really helped me to realize that and come to terms that I have a lot to offer. And it's about giving that to those that deserve it, and also me that deserves the opportunity, or to receiving that opportunity.
I'm just looking at the questions. There's a question for you. Society is changing. One gets a sense that the things are happening. Is it happening fast enough? And do you think it's really changing?
There is change, in the sense, years ago, there wouldn't have been a program for apprentices for diversity and inclusion at NatWest. That in itself is the big difference. That's not to say that we're at a perfect level. There is so much more that needs to be done, but we are in a good place. We're at a good stepping stone. It's a good start. That's not to say we're close to the finish or we're halfway at the finish, but we will get there one day, and we have to constantly make that conscious effort to make sure we are being inclusive and really promoting diversity in the workplace.
And another related question for everybody really is owning your background and being proud of it. How do you what's your response to that?
I think we can all admit that our backgrounds shape who we are and how we carry ourselves in life. If I didn't own the fact I come from a disadvantaged background, would people then still offer me these opportunities? Probably not. I would be left behind in my disadvantaged background and never really have the chance to not be disadvantaged, and one day be in the position where I feel like I am advantaged. So I think embracing where you're from is such a crucial thing. That's not to say you should allow that to hold yourself back. You should see that as a framework of, this is where I started and this is where I am now.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I have, my son is actually watching this, so it's a bit embarrassing. He'll be saying, Dad, you shouldn't have said that. But basically, I have a brother who, at birth, had too much oxygen, then too little, and has had very limited sight and all sorts of other ailments during his life. But the one thing I've learned from him is never complained once. Not once. He's just lived his life as, it's been an extraordinary journey to watch him. But what's magical, he never complains. He owns it, and it's a really interesting observation. Could I just ask Paul, how long have you been in the job now, and tell people what your job is?
Thank you. Yes, you wouldn't believe it. I've been in the job since April, joined during lockdown, and this is the way I've met my colleagues over Zoom. And as lovely as they all are on their faces and upper bodies, I really can't wait to meet them in person, as you can imagine. What's the job? The job is creating impact. At its simplest term, it's supporting young people into work, into meaningful careers where they're paid fairly, where they have the opportunity to turn their lives around. So my job is to lead the organisation, along with the chair and founder, David, to ensure that we do just that every resource, everything we do, everything we think about is channeled into helping young people that face a range of barriers and disadvantage get the careers that they deserve, that meet their aspirations, and that give them that real opportunity to get on track and live fulfilling lives. And that's it in simple terms.
What's your, with lockdown, every business, and I'm involved in lots of different businesses, but wow, we've learned a lot about, we've adjusted to the new way of working in a different way. But what have you learned about LTSB during this whole process?
I've learned loads of things. I mean, the resilience of this organisation, the way we're set up to cope, adapt and respond has been fantastic. That's just the organisation, how we've gone about doing our business. The main thing that I'm shocked in some ways and surprised in a really positive way is the way we've engaged with young people. Every member of the team has forgotten job titles and got on with the job of youth work, which might be contacting young people at the weekends, in the evenings. How are you doing? You know, how are you dealing yourself as a young person through this crisis? What can we do for you? We mentioned, you know, Pete earlier on, who wants to support young people. He's one of a great team at LTSB that are doing that every day. Not shouting about it much, not making a song and dance, just getting on with the business of being youth workers, which is you know, right at the heart of what we are, really. So resilience, care, passion for the job, that's what I've been impressed with. I don't think there is a better youth team out there, and I've worked with many.
David, I need to wrap up in the last few minutes. Have you got any final message you'd like to give the audience, and then I'll get a final message from everybody? I've got to be a good chairman and make sure we finish on time.
You do, and it's looking good. It's looking good. I would just say,
how long you speak for, David.
Very, very short period of time. Giving is often regarded as better than receiving, and I think that I would like everybody listening here, and maybe you're going to have a question to see how it happens, but I want everybody that's listening here to look within their networks and see how they can help these young people using LTSB and contacting Paul and his staff or me to find out how you can help more young people, how you can act to help more young people get a chance, because the world is changing and we must be on board when this world changes. And I would just like to say one other thing. Paul is our new CEO. The person who has taken this charity from 2012 to now is a lady called Caroline Adair, who is going to become the commercial director of this organization, focusing on NatWest and other organizations like NatWest, but primarily NatWest. Our first job is to do the very best job for NatWest, so that we can show that we can do it for other large groups of people like that. But I want to thank Caroline for doing it. I want to wish Paul a fantastic future. He's already shown that he's absolutely the man to be CEO.
Caroline, well done. You genuinely have taken this to a new level. And Jimmy, let me start with you, and then I'll go to Cheryl. What advice have you got in terms of how people might mentor others and help them on their journey, but also in terms of getting people involved with LTSB?
I think Justine has hit the nail. We are all from a different background, whatever that background is. We need to try to cater for everybody, and listen to each other. By listening to each other, we know what our needs are. And me personally, that's why it's important for me. I am from that kind of community. That's why I want to give back. You know, we have got this obligation on making these communities better. It's a breath of fresh air to see Justine speaking and being in her own and holding her own. There are so many more Justines around, and we have got the obligation to just explore those things, to help them and get them an opportunity. That's why I'm working with Slanky, because they're so good at passions, everybody's passion, whatever that passion is. So I'm actually very, very passionate about it to help, and nothing is enough for me to do. Nothing is too much for me to do. Sorry.
No, wonderful message. Cheryl, any final message?
Yeah, just think about how you can make a difference as an individual. I look at Justina, I'm so happy to see her journey. I remember myself so many years ago on a similar journey. So it's possible to go from a program, to go from being disadvantaged, to move through corporations and organizations, to be in leadership. And it takes investing in relationships. Invest in relationship with someone who may be different than you, that you can learn from and you can teach them. And together we can make a difference and really activate purpose.
Thank you. Justina.
My final message would be to really emphasize the fact Andy invested in this moment of change before media exposure and before the recent protests. The culture at NatWest, it's table tennis tournaments, it's actually open and honest conversations about racism and diversity in the workplace. It's having your voice heard and being able to express yourself. I think it's really crucial to work with companies such as LTSB, because LTSD, they recognize the talent, whereas Andy offered the opportunity, and it's about bringing those two together.
Thank you, Andy. Final comments, and I should say, as I introduced you, thank you so much to NatWest for your support. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, very briefly, look, you've seen and heard from Justina. If you want more talent like her, go out, do something about it. If you look a bit like me and work in a corporate and you're not doing anything about this issue, you should. The time's ready, and it's more important than ever as we face economic tough times. So please, if you can, do something. It feels good too.
Yeah, my final message, and thank you, a huge thank you to David, the team at LTSB, is if you're a corporation out there and you're watching and listening, please help us. For individuals, please mentor others. There's always somebody that's less fortunate than yourself. And for those that really do need help, just reach out to us, to me. We would love to help you on your journey. That's the purpose of this. Thank you very much for joining us, and keep well. Okay, thank you.